Section 1 of Thanksgiving Stories and Poems.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Gabriella Sasscer. An Old-Fashioned Thanksgiving by Louisa May Alcott. 60 years ago, up among the New Hampshire hills, lived Farmer Bassett, with a house full of sturdy sons and daughters growing up about him. They were poor in money, but rich in land and love. For the wide acres of wood, corn, and pasture land fed, warmed, and clothed the flock, while mutual patience, affection, and courage made the old farmhouse a very happy home. November had come, the crops were in, and barn, buttery, and bin were overflowing with the harvest that rewarded the summer's hard work. The big kitchen was a jolly place just now, for in the great fireplace roared a cheerful fire. On the walls hung garlands of dried apples, onions, and corn. Up aloft from the beams shone crook-necked squashes, juicy hams, and dried venison. For in those days deer still haunted the deep forests, and hunters flourished. Savory smells were in the air. On the crane hung steaming kettles, and down among the red embers copper saucepans simmered, all suggestive of some approaching feast. A white-headed baby lay in the old blue cradle that had rocked 7 other babies, now and then lifting his head to look out, like a round, full moon, then subsided to kick and crow contentedly, and suck the rosy apple he had no teeth to bite. 2 small boys sat on the wooden settle, shelling corn for popping, and picking out the biggest nuts from the goodly store their own hands had gathered in October. 4 young girls stood at the long dresser, busily chopping meat, pounding spice, and slicing apples, and the tongues of Tilly, Prue, Roxy, and Rhodey went as fast as their hands. Farmer Bassett and Eph, the oldest boy, were choring round, outside, for Thanksgiving was at hand, and all must be in order for that time-honored day. To and fro, from table to hearth, bustled buxom Mrs. Bassett, flushed and flowery, but busy and blithe as the queen bee of this busy little hive should be. "I do like to begin seasonably and have things to my mind. Thanksgiving dinners can't be drove, and it does take a sight of victuals to fill all these hungry stomachs," said the good woman, as she gave a vigorous stir to the great kettle of cider apple-sauce, and cast a glance of housewifely pride at the fine array of pies set forth on the buttery shelves. "Only one more day, and then it will be time to eat. I didn't take but 1 bowl of hasty pudding this morning, so I shall have plenty of room when the nice things come," confided Seth to Saul, as he cracked a large hazelnut as easily as a squirrel. "No need of my starving beforehand. I always have room enough, and I'd like to have Thanksgiving every day," answered Solomon, gloating like a young ogre over the little pig that lay near by, ready for roasting. "Sakes alive, I don't, boys. It's a marcy it don't come but once a year. I shall be worn to a thread paper with all this extra work, atop of my winter weaving and spinning," laughed their mother, as she plunged her plump arms into the long bread trough, and began to knead the dough as if a famine was at hand. Tilly, the oldest girl, a red-cheeked, black-eyed lass of 14, was grinding briskly at the mortar, for spices were costly, and not a grain must be wasted. Prue kept time with the chopper, and the twins sliced away at the apples till their little brown arms ached, for all knew how to work, and did so now with a will. "I think it's real fun to have Thanksgiving at home. I'm sorry Grandma is sick, so we can't go there as usual, but I like to mess round here, don't you, girls?" asked Tilly, pausing to take a sniff at the spicy pistol. "It will be kind of lonesome with only our own folks. I like to see all the cousins and aunts, and have games and sing," cried the twins, who were regular little romps, and could run, swim, coast, and shout as well as their brothers. "I don't care a mite for all that. It will be so nice to eat dinner together, warm and comfortable at home," said quiet Prue, who loved her own cozy nooks like a cat. "Come, girls, fly round and get your chores done, so we can clear away for dinner just as soon as I clap my bread into the oven," called Mrs. Bassett presently, as she rounded off the last loaf of brown bread, which was to feed the hungry mouths that seldom tasted any other. "Here's a man coming up the hill, lively. Guess it's Gad Hopkins. Pa told him to bring up the dozen oranges, if they weren't too high," shouted Saul and Seth, running to the door while the girls smacked their lips at the thought of this rare treat, and Baby threw his apple overboard as if getting ready for a new cargo. But all were doomed to disappointment, for it was not Gad with the much-desired fruit. It was a stranger, who threw himself off his horse and hurried up to Mr. Bassett in the yard, with some brief message that made the farmer drop his axe and look so sober that his wife guessed at once some bad news had come, and crying, "Mother's worse, I know she is," out ran the good woman, forgetful of the flour on her arms and the oven waiting for its most important batch. The man said old Mr. Chadwick, down in Keene, stopped him as he passed, and told him to tell Mrs. Bassett her mother was
Failing fast,
and she'd better come today. He knew no more, and having delivered his errand, he rode away, saying it looked like snow, and he must be joggin', or he wouldn't get home till night. "We must go right off, Eldad. Hitch up, and I'll be ready in less'n no time," said Mrs. Bassett, wasting not a minute in tears and lamentations, but pulling off her apron as she went in, with her mind in a sad jumble of bread, anxiety, turkey, sorrow, haste, and cider apple sauce. A few words told the story, and the children left their work to help her get ready, mingling their grief for Grandma with regrets for the lost dinner. "I'm dreadfully sorry, dears, but it can't be helped. I couldn't cook nor eat no way now, and if that blessed woman gets better sudden, as she has before, we'll have cause for Thanksgivin', and I'll give you a dinner you won't forget in a hurry," said Mrs. Bassett, as she tied on her brown silk pumpkin hood, with a sob for the good old mother who had made it for her. Not a child complained after that, but ran about helpfully, bringing moccasins, heating the footstone, and getting ready for a long drive, because Grandma lived 20 miles away, and there were no railroads in those parts to whisk people to and fro like magic. By the time the old yellow sleigh was at the door, the bread was in the oven, and Mrs. Bassett was waiting, with her camlet cloak on, and the baby done up like a small bale of blankets. "Now, Eph, you must look after the cattle like a man, and keep up the fires, for there's a storm brewin', and neither children nor dumb critters must suffer," said Mr. Bassett, as he turned up the collar of his rough coat and put on his blue mittens, while the old mare shook her bells as if she preferred a trip to Keene to hauling wood all day. "Tilly, put extra comfortables on the bed tonight. The wind is so searchin' up chamber. Have the baked beans and Injun puddin' for dinner, and whatever you do, don't let the boys get at the mince pies, or you'll have them down sick. I shall come back the minute I can leave Mother. Pa will come tomorrow, anyway, so keep snug, and be good. I depend on you, my darter. Use your judgment, and don't let nothin' happen while Mother's away." "Yes'm, yes'm. Goodbye, goodbye," called the children, as Mrs. Bassett was packed into the sleigh and driven away, leaving a stream of directions behind her. F, the 16-year-old boy, immediately put on his biggest boots, assumed a sober, responsible manner, and surveyed his little responsibilities with a paternal air, drawly like his father's. Tilly tied on her mother's bunch of keys, rolled up the sleeves of her homespun gown, and began to order about the younger girls. They soon forgot poor Granny, and found it great fun to keep house all alone, for Mother seldom left home, but ruled her family in the good old-fashioned way. There were no servants, for the little daughters were Mrs. Bassett's only maids, and the stout boys helped their father, all working happily together with no wages but love, learning in the best manner the use of the heads and hands with which they were to make their own way in the world. The few flakes that caused the farmer to predict bad weather soon increased to a regular snowstorm, with gusts of wind, for up among the hills winter came early and lingered long. But the children were busy, gay, and warm indoors, and never minded the rising gale or the whirling white storm outside. Tilly got them a good dinner, and when it was over, the 2 elder girls went to their spinning, for in the kitchen stood the big and little wheels, and baskets of wool rolls, ready to be twisted into yarn for the winter's knitting, and each day brought its stint of work to the daughters, who hoped to be as thrifty as their mother. F kept up a glorious fire and superintended the small boys, who popped corn and whittled boats on the hearth, while Roxy and Rhodey dressed corncob dolls in the settle corner, and Bose, the brindled mastiff, lay on the braided mat, luxuriously warming his old legs. Thus employed, they made a pretty picture, these rosy boys and girls, in their homespun suits, with the rustic toys or tasks which most children nowadays would find very poor or tiresome. Tilly and Prue sang as they stepped to and fro, drawing out the smoothly twisted threads to the musical hum of the great spinning wheels. The little girls chattered like magpies over their dolls and the new bedspread they were planning to make, all white and dimity stars on a blue calico ground, as a Christmas present to Ma. The boys roared at F's jokes, and had rough and tumble games over Bose, who didn't mind them in the least, and so the afternoon wore pleasantly away. At sunset the boys went out to feed the cattle, bring in heaps of wood, and lock up for the night, as the lonely farmhouse seldom had visitors after dark. The girls got the simple supper of brown bread and milk, baked apples, and a doughnut all round as a treat. Then they sat before the fire, the sisters knitting, the brothers with books or games. For F loved reading, and Saul and Seth never failed to play a few games of Morris with barley corns on the little board they had made themselves at the corner of the dresser. "Read out a piece," said Tilly from Mother's chair, where she sat in state, finishing off the 6th woolen sock she had knit that month. "It's the old history book, but there's a bit you may like, since it's about our folks," answered F, turning the yellow page to look at a picture of 2 quaintly dressed children in some ancient castle. "Yes, read that. I always like to hear about the Lady Matilda I was named for, and Lord Bassett, Pa's great-great-great-grandpa. He's only a farmer now, but it's nice to know that we were somebody 200 or 300 years ago," said Tilly, bridling and tossing her curly head, as she fancied the Lady Matilda might have done. "Don't read the queer words, 'cause we don't understand 'em. Tell it," commanded Roxy from the cradle, where she was drowsily cuddled with Rhodey. "Well, a long time ago, when Charles the First was in prison, Lord Bassett was a true friend to him," began F, plunging into his story without delay. "The Lord had some papers that would have hung a lot of people if the king's enemies got hold of him. So when he heard one day, all of a sudden, that soldiers were at the castle gate to carry him off, he had just time to call his girl to him and say, 'I may be going to my death, but I won't betray my master. There is no time to burn the papers, and I could not take them with me. They are hidden in the old leather chair where I sit. No one knows this but you, and you must guard them till I come or send you a safe messenger to take them away. Promise me to be brave and silent. I can go without fear. You see, he wasn't afraid to die, but he was to seem a traitor.' Lady Matilda promised solemnly, and the words were hardly out of her mouth when the men came, and her father was carried away, a prisoner, and sent off to the Tower. She didn't cry, she just called her brother and sat down in that chair, with her head leaning back on those papers, like a queen, and waited while the soldiers hunted the house over for him. Wasn't that a smart girl?" cried Tilly, beaming with pride, for she was named for this ancestress, and knew the story by heart. "I reckon she was scared, though, when the men came swearing in and asked her if she knew anything about it. The boy did his part then, for he didn't know, and fired up and stood before his sister, and he says he, as bold as a lion, 'If my lord had told us where the papers be, we would die before we would betray him. But we are children and know nothing, and it is cowardly of you to try to fright us with oaths and drawn swords.'" As F quoted from the book, Seth planted himself before Tilly with a long poker in his hand, saying as he flourished it valiantly, "Why didn't the boy take his father's sword and lay about him? I would, if any one was hashed to Tilly." "You bantam, he was only a bit of a boy, and couldn't do anything. Sit down and hear the rest of it," commanded Tilly, with a pat on the yellow head, and a private resolve that Seth should have the largest piece of pie at dinner next day, as reward for his chivalry. Well, the men went off after turning the castle out of window, but they said they should come again, so faithful Matilda was full of trouble and hardly dared to leave the room where the chair stood. All day she sat there, and at night her sleep was so full of fear about it that she often got up and went to see that all was safe. The servants thought the fright had hurt her wits, and let her be, but Rupert, the boy, stood by her and never was afraid of her queer ways. She was a pious maid, the book says, and often spent the long evenings reading the Bible, with her brother by her, all alone in the great room, with no one to help her bear her secret, and no good news of her father. At last word came that the king was dead, and his friends banished out of England. Then the poor children were in a sad plight, for they had no mother, and the servants all ran away, leaving only one faithful old man to help them. "But the father did come!" cried Roxy eagerly. "You'll see," continued F, half telling, half reading. Matilda was sure he would, so she sat on the big chair guarding the papers, and no one could get her away, till one day a man came with her father's ring, and told her to give up the secret. She knew the ring, but would not tell until she had asked many questions, so as to be very sure. And while the man answered all about her father and the king, she looked at him sharply. Then she stood up and said, in a tremble, for there was something strange about the man, "Sir, I doubt you in spite of the ring, and I will not answer till you pull off the false beard you wear, that I may see your face and know if you are my father's friend or foe." Off came the disguise, and Matilda found it was my lord himself, come to take them with him out of England. He was very proud of that faithful girl, I guess, for the old chair still stands in the castle, and the name keeps in the family. Pa says even here, where some of the Bassets came along with the Pilgrims. Our Tilly would have been as brave, I know, and she looks the old picture down to Grandma's, don't she, Eph? Cried Prue, who admired her bold, bright sister very much. Well, I think you do the settin' part best, Prue. You are so patient. Till would fight like a wild cat, but she can't hold her tongue worth a cent, answered Eph, whereat Tilly pulled his hair, and the story ended with a general frolic. When the moon-faced clock behind the door struck 9, Tilly tucked up the children under the extra comfortables, and having kissed them all around, as Mother did, crept into her own nest, never minding the little drifts of snow that sifted in upon her coverlet between the shingles of the roof, nor the storm that raged without.
As if he felt the need of unusual vigilance, old Bose lay down on the mat before the door, and Pussy had the warm hearth all to herself. If any late wanderer had looked in at midnight, he would have seen the fire blazing up again, and in the cheerful glow the old cat blinking her yellow eyes, as she sat bolt upright beside the spinning wheel, like some sort of household goblin, guarding the children while they slept.
When they woke, like early birds, it still snowed, but up the little Bassets jumped, broke the ice in their pitchers, and went down with cheeks glowing like winter apples. After a brisk scrub and scrambling into their clothes, Eph was off to the barn, and Tilly soon had a great kettle of mush ready, which, with milk warm from the cows, made a wholesome breakfast for the 7 hearty children. "Now about dinner," said the young housekeeper, as the pewter spoons stopped clattering and the earthen bowls stood empty. "Ma said have what we liked, but she didn't expect us to have a real Thanksgiving dinner, because she won't be here to cook it, and we don't know how," began Prue doubtfully. "I can roast turkey and make a pudding as well as anybody, I guess. The pies are all ready, and if we can't boil vegetables and so on, we don't deserve any dinner," cried Tilly, burning to distinguish herself, and bound to enjoy, to the utmost, her brief authority. "Yes, yes!" cried all the boys. "Let's have dinner anyway. Ma won't care, and the good victuals will spoil if they ain't eaten right up. Pa is coming tonight, so we won't have dinner till late. That will be real genteel, and give us plenty of time," added Tilly, suddenly realizing the novelty of the task she had undertaken. "Did you ever roast a turkey?" asked Roxy, with an air of deep interest. "Should you darst to try?" said Rhodey, in an awe-stricken tone. You will see what I can do. Ma said I was to use my judgment about things, and I'm going to. All you children have got to do is to keep out of the way and let Prue and me work. I wish you'd put a fire in the best room so the little ones can play in there. We shall want the settin' room for the table, and I won't have 'em pickin' round when we get things fixed," commanded Tilly, bound to make her short reign a brilliant one. "I don't know 'bout that. Ma didn't tell us to," began cautious F, who felt that this invasion of the sacred best parlor was a daring step. "Don't we always do it Sundays and Thanksgivings? Wouldn't Ma wish the children kept safe and warm anyhow? Can I get up a nice dinner with 4 rascals under my feet all the time? Come now, if you want roast turkey and onions, plum pudding and mince pie, you'll have to do as I tell you, and be lively about it." Tilly spoke with such spirit, and her last suggestion was so irresistible that F gave in, and laughing good-naturedly, tramped away to heat up the best room, devoutly hoping that nothing serious would happen to punish such audacity. The young folks delightedly trooped in to destroy the order of that prim apartment, with housekeeping under the black horsehair sofa, horseback riders on the arms of the best rocking-chair, and an Indian war dance all over the well-waxed furniture. F, finding the society of the peaceful sheep and cows more to his mind than that of 2 excited sisters, lingered over his chores in the barn as long as possible, and left the girls in peace. Now Tilly and Prue were in their glory, and as soon as the breakfast things were out of the way, they prepared for a grand cooking time. They were handy girls, though they had never heard of a cooking school, never touched a piano, and knew nothing of embroidery beyond the samplers which hung framed in the parlor, one ornamented with a pink border under a blue weeping willow, the other with this pleasing verse, each word being done in a different color, which gave the effect of a distracted rainbow. "This sampler neat was worked by me, in my 12th year, Prudence B." Both rolled up their sleeves, put on their largest aprons, and got out all the spoons, dishes, pots, and pans they could find, "so as to have everything handy," as Prue said. "Now, sister, we'll have dinner at 5. Paul will be here by that time, if he is coming tonight, and be so surprised to find us all ready, for you won't have had any very nice victuals if Grandma is so sick," said Tilly importantly. "I shall give the children a piece at noon." Tilly meant luncheon. "Doughnuts and cheese with apple pie and cider will please 'em. There's beans for F. He likes cold pork, so we won't stop to warm it up. And there's lots to do. And I don't mind saying to you, I'm dreadful dubersome about the turkey." "It's all ready but the stuffin', and roastin' is as easy as can be. I can baste first rate. Ma always likes to have me. I'm so patient and stiddy, she says," answered Prue, for the responsibility of this great undertaking did not rest upon her, so she took a cheerful view of things. "I know, but it's the stuffin' that troubles me," said Tilly, rubbing her round elbows as she eyed the immense fowl laid out on the platter before her. "I don't know how much I want, nor what sort of yarbs to put in, and he's so awful big, I'm kind of afraid of him." "I ain't. I fed him all summer, and he never gobbled at me. I feel real mean to be thinking of gobbling him, poor old chap," laughed Prue, patting her departed pet, with an air of mingled affection and appetite. "Well, I'll get the puddin' off my mind first, for it ought to bile all day. Put the big kettle on, and see that the spit is clean, while I get ready." Prue obediently tugged away at the crane with its black hooks, from which hung the iron tea-kettle and 3-legged pot. Then she settled the long spit in the grooves made for it in the tall andirons, and put the dripping pan underneath, for in those days meat was roasted as it should be, not baked in ovens. Meantime, Tilly attacked the plum pudding. She felt pretty sure of coming out right here, for she had seen her mother do it so many times. It looked very easy. So in went suet and fruit, all sorts of spice, to be sure she got the right ones, and brandy instead of wine. But she forgot both sugar and salt, and tied it in the cloth so tightly that it had no room to swell, so it would come out as heavy as lead and as hard as a cannonball, if the bag did not burst and spoil it all. Happily unconscious of these mistakes, Tilly popped it into the pot, and proudly watched it bobbing about before she put the cover on and left it to its fate. "I can't remember what flavoring Ma puts in," she said, when she had got her bread well soaked for the stuffing. "Sage and onions and applesauce go with goose, but I can't feel sure of anything but pepper and salt for a turkey. Ma puts in some kind of mint, I know, but I forget whether it's spearmint, peppermint, or pennyroyal," answered Prue in a tone of doubt, but trying to show her knowledge of yarbs, or at least of their names. "Seem to me it's sweet marjoram or summer savory. I guess we'll put both in, and then we're sure to be right. The best is up garret. You run and get some while I mash the bread," commanded Tilly, diving into the mess. Away trotted Prue, but in her haste she got catnip and wormwood, for the garret was darkish, and Prue's little nose was so full of the smell of the onions she had been peeling, that everything smelt of them. Eager to be of use, she pounded up the herbs, and scattered the mixture with a liberal hand into the bowl. "It doesn't smell just right, but I suppose it will when it is cooked," said Tilly, as she filled the empty stomach that seemed aching for food, and sewed it up with the blue yarn, which happened to be handy. She forgot to tie down his legs and wings, but she set him by till his hour came, well satisfied with her work. "Shall we roast the little pig, too? I think he'd look nice with a necklace of sausages, as Ma fixed one last Christmas," asked Prue, elated with their success. "I couldn't do it. I loved that little pig, and cried when he was killed. I should feel as if I was roasting the baby," answered Tilly, glancing toward the buttery where Piggy hung. Looking so pink and pretty, it certainly did seem cruel to eat him. It took a long time to get all the vegetables ready, for as the cellar was full, the girls thought they would have every sort. F helped, and by noon all was ready for cooking, and the cranberry sauce, a good deal scorched, was cooling in the lean-to. Luncheon was a lively meal, and doughnuts and cheese vanished in such quantities that Tilly feared no one would have an appetite for her sumptuous dinner. The boys assured her they would be starving by 5 o'clock, and Saul mourned bitterly over the little pig that was not to be served up. "Now you all go and coast, while Prue and I set the table and get out the best chiny," said Tilly, bent on having her dinner look well, no matter what its other failings might be. Out came the rough sleds, on went the round hoods, old hats, red cloaks, and moccasins, and away trudged the 4 younger Bassets, to disport themselves in the snow and try the ice down by the old mill, where the great wheel turned and splashed so merrily in the summer-time. F took out his fiddle and scraped away to his heart's content in the parlor, while the girls, after a short rest, set the table and made all ready to dish up the dinner when that exciting moment came. It was not at all the sort of table we see now, but would look very plain and countrified to us, with its green-handled knives and 2-pronged steel forks, its red and white china and pewter platters, scoured till they shone, with mugs and spoons to match, and a brown jug for the cider. The cloth was coarse, but white as snow, and the little maids had seen the blue-eyed flax grow out of which their mother wove the linen. They had watched and watered while it bleached in the green meadow. They had no napkins and little silver, but the best tankard and Ma's few wedding spoons were set forth in state. Nuts and apples at the corners gave an air, and the place of honor was left in the middle for the oranges yet to come. "Don't it look beautiful?" said Prue, when they paused to admire the general effect. "Pretty nice, I think. I wish Ma could see how well we can do it," began Tilly, when a loud howling startled both girls and set them flying to the window. The short afternoon had passed so quickly that twilight had come before they knew it, and now as they looked out through the gathering dusk, they saw 4 small black figures tearing up the road, to come bursting in, all screaming at once. "The bear! The bear! F, get the gun! He's coming! He's coming!" F had dropped his fiddle and got down his gun before the girls could calm the children enough to tell their story, which they did in a somewhat incoherent manner. "Down in the holler, coastin', we heard a growl," began Saul, with his eyes as big as saucers. "I see him fust lookin' over the wall," roared Seth, eager to get his share of honor. "Awful big and shaggy," quavered Roxy, clinging to Tilly, while Rhodey hid in Prue's skirts, and piped out, "His great paws kept clawing at us, and I was so scared my legs would hardly go. We ran away as fast as we could go, and he came growling after us. He's awful hungry, and he'll eat every one of us if he gets in," continued Saul, looking about him for a safe retreat. "Oh, F, don't let him get us!" cried both little girls, flying upstairs to hide under their mother's bed, as their surest shelter. "No danger of that, you little geese. I'll shoot him as soon as he comes. Get out of the way, boys." And F raised the window to get good aim. "There he is! Fire away and don't miss!" cried Seth, hastily following Saul, who had climbed to the top of the dresser as a good perch from which to view the approaching fray. Prue retired to the hearth, as if bent on dying at her post, rather than desert the turkey now, browning beautifully, as she expressed it. But Tilly boldly stood at the open window, ready to lend a hand if the enemy proved too much for F. All had seen bears, but none had ever come so near before, and even brave F felt that the big brown beast, slowly trotting up the dooryard, was an unusually formidable specimen. He was growling horribly, and stopped now and then, as if to rest and shake himself. "Get the axe, Tilly, and if I should miss, stand ready to keep him off while I load again," said F, anxious to kill his first bear in style, and alone. A girl's help didn't count. Tilly flew for the axe, and was at her brother's side by the time the bear was near enough to be dangerous. He stood on his hind legs, and seemed to sniff with relish the savory odors that poured out of the window. "Fire, F!" cried Tilly firmly. "Wait till he rears again. I'll get a better shot then," answered the boy, while Prue covered her ears to shut out the bang, and the small boys cheered from their dusty refuge up among the pumpkins. But a very singular thing happened next, and all who saw it stood amazed, for suddenly Tilly threw down the axe, flung open the door, and ran straight into the arms of the bear, who stood erect to receive her, while his growlings changed to a loud "Ha-ha!" that startled the children more than the report of a gun. "It's Gad Hopkins trying to fool us!" cried F, much disgusted at the loss of his prey, for these hardy boys loved to hunt, and prided themselves on the number of wild animals and birds they could shoot in a year. "Gad, how could you scare us so?" laughed Tilly, still held fast in one shaggy arm of the bear, while the other drew a dozen oranges from some deep pocket in the buffalo skin coat, and fired them into the kitchen with such good aim that F ducked. Prue screamed, and Saul and Seth came down much quicker than they went up. "Why, you see, I got upset over yonder, and the old horse went home while I was floundering in a drift, so I tied on the bufflers to tote 'em easy, and came along till I see the children playing in the holler. I just meant to give 'em a little scare, but they run like partridges, and I cup up the joke to see how F would like this sort of company." And Gad ha-ha'd again. "You'd have had a warm welcome if we hadn't found you out. I'd have put a bullet through you in a jiffy, old chap," said F, coming out to shake hands with the young giant, who was only a year or two older than himself. "Come in and set up dinner with us. Prue and I have done it ourselves, and Pa will be along soon, I reckon," cried Tilly, trying to escape. "Couldn't no ways. My folks will think I'm dead if I don't get along home, since the horse and sleigh have gone ahead empty. I've done my arrant and had my joke. Now I want my pay, Tilly." And Gad took a hearty kiss from the rosy cheeks of his little sweetheart, as he called her. His own cheeks tingled with the smart slap she gave him as she ran away, calling out that she hated bears and would bring her axe next time. "I ain't afeared. Your sharp eyes found me out, and if you run into a bear's arm, you must expect a hug," answered Gad, as he pushed back the robe and settled his fur cap more becomingly. "I should have known you in a minute if I hadn't been asleep when the girl squalled. You did it well, though, and I advise you not to try it again in a hurry, or you'll get shot," said F, as they parted, he rather crestfallen, and Gad in high glee. "My sakes alive! The turkey is burnt one side, and the kettles have biled over so the pies I put in to warm are all ashes," scolded Tilly, as the flurry subsided and she remembered her dinner. "Well, I can't help it. I couldn't think of victuals when I expected to be eaten alive myself, could I?" pleaded poor Prue, who had tumbled into the cradle when the rain of oranges began. Tilly laughed, and all the rest joined in, so good humor was restored, and the spirits of the younger ones were revived by sucks from the one orange which passed from hand to hand with great rapidity, while the older girls dished up the dinner. They were just struggling to get the pudding out of the cloth, when Roxy called out, "Here's Pa! There's folks with him," added Rhodey. "Lots of 'em. I see 2 big sleighs chock full," shouted Seth, peering through the dusk. "Looks like a cemetery. Guess Grandma's dead and come up to be buried here," said Saul in a solemn tone. This startling suggestion made Tilly, Prue, and Eph hasten to look out, full of dismay at such an ending of their festival. "If that is a funeral, the mourners are uncommon jolly," said Eph dryly, as merry voices and loud laughter broke the white silence without. "I see Aunt Cynthia and Cousin Hetty, and there's Mose and Amos. I do declare, Pa's bringing 'em all home to have some fun here," cried Prue, as she recognized one familiar face after another. "Oh, my patience! Ain't I glad I got dinner, and don't I hope it will turn out good!" exclaimed Tilly, while the twins pranced with delight, and the small boys roared, "Hooray for Pa! Hooray for Thanksgiving!" The cheer was answered heartily, and in came father, mother, baby, aunts, and cousins, all in great spirits, and all much surprised to find such a festive welcome awaiting them. "Ain't Grandma dead at all?" asked Saul in the midst of the kissing and handshaking. "Bless your heart, no. It was all a mistake of old Mr. Chadwick's. He's as deaf as an adder, and when Mrs. Brooks told him Mother was mending fast, and she wanted me to come down today, certain sure, he got the message all wrong, and give it to the first person passing, in such a way as to scare me most to death, and send us down in a hurry. Mother was sitting up as chirk as you please, and dreadful sorry you didn't all come. So to keep the house quiet for her, and give you a taste of the fun, your pa fetched us all up to spend the evening, and we are going to have a jolly time on't to judge by the looks of things," said Aunt Cynthia, briskly finishing the tale, when Mrs. Bassett paused for want of breath. "What in the world put it into your head we was comin', and set you to getting up such a supper?" asked Mr. Bassett, looking about him, well pleased and much surprised at the plentiful table. Tilly modestly began to tell, but the others broke in and sang her praises in a sort of chorus, in which bears, pigs, pies, and oranges were oddly mixed. Great satisfaction was expressed by all, and Tilly and Prue were so elated by the commendation of Ma and the aunts that they set forth their dinner, sure everything was perfect. But when the eating began, which it did the moment wraps were off, then their pride got a fall, for the first person who tasted the stuffing, it was big Cousin Mose, and that made it harder to bear, nearly choked over the bitter morsel. "Tilly Bassett, whatever made you put wormwood and catnip in your stuffin'?" demanded Ma, trying not to be severe, for all the rest were laughing, and Tilly looked ready to cry. "I did it," said Prue, nobly taking all the blame, which caused Pa to kiss her on the spot, and declare that it didn't do a mite of harm, for the turkey was all right. "I never see onions cooked better. All the vegetables is well done, and the dinner a credit to you, my dears," declared Aunt Cynthia, with her mouth full of the fragrant vegetable she praised. The pudding was an utter failure, in spite of the blazing brandy in which it lay, as hard and heavy as one of the stone balls on Square Duncan's great gate. It was speedily whisked out of sight, and all fell upon the pies, which were perfect. But Tilly and Prue were much depressed, and didn't recover their spirits till the dinner was over and the evening fun well under way. Blind Man's Buff, Hunt the Slipper, Come Philander, and other lively games soon set everyone bubbling over with jollity. And when Eph struck up Money Musk on his fiddle, old and young fell into their places for a dance. All down the long kitchen they stood, Mr. and Mrs. Bassett at the top, the twins at the bottom, and then away they went, heeling and towing, cutting pigeon wings, and taking their steps in a way that would convulse modern children with their new-fangled romps called dancing. Mose and Tilly covered themselves with glory by the vigor with which they kept it up, till fat Aunt Cynthia fell into a chair, breathlessly declaring that a very little of such exercise was enough for a woman of her heft. Apples and cider, chat and singing finished the evening, and after a grand kissing all round, the guests drove away in the clear moonlight, which came just in time to cheer their long drive. When the jingle of the last bell had died away, Mr. Bassett said soberly as they stood together on the hearth, "Children, we have a special cause to be thankful that the sorrow we expected was changed into joy, so we'll read a chapter before we go to bed and give thanks where thanks is due." Then Tilly set out the light stand with the big Bible on it, and a candle on each side, and all sat quietly in the firelight, smiling as they listened with happy hearts to the sweet old words that fit all times and seasons so beautifully. When the good nights were over, and the children in bed, Prue put her arm around Tilly and whispered tenderly, for she felt her shake and was sure she was crying, "Don't mind about the old stuffin' and puddin', dearie. Nobody cared, and Ma said we really did do surprisin' well for such young girls." The laughter Tilly was trying to smother broke out then, and was so infectious Prue could not help joining her, even before she knew the cause of the merriment. "I was mad about the mistakes, but don't care enough to cry. I'm laughin' to think how Gad fooled Eph, and I found him out. I thought Mose and Amos would have died over it when I told them. It was so funny," explained Tilly when she got her breath. "I was so scared that when the first orange hit me, I thought it was a bullet, and scrabbled into the cradle as fast as I could. It was real mean to frighten the little ones so," laughed Prue, as Tilly gave a growl. Here, a smart rap on the wall of the next room caused a sudden lull in the fun, and Mrs. Bassett's voice was heard saying warningly, "Girls, go to sleep immediately, or you'll wake the baby." "Yes'm," answered two meek voices, and after a few irrepressible giggles, silence reigned, broken only by an occasional snore from the boys, or the soft scurry of mice in the buttery, taking their part in the old-fashioned Thanksgiving. End of An Old-Fashioned Thanksgiving by Louisa May Alcott. Section 2 of Thanksgiving Short Stories and Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Gabriella Sasscer. Grand'ther Baldwin's Thanksgiving by Horatio Alger, Jr. Underneath protected branches, from the highway just aloof, stands the house of Grand'ther Baldwin, with its gently sloping roof. Square of shape and solid timbered, it was standing, I have heard, in the days of Whig and Tory, under Royal George III. Many a time I well remember, I have gazed with childish awe at the bullet hole remaining in the sturdy oaken door, turning round half apprehensive, recking not how time had fled, of the lurking savage foeman from whose musket it was sped. Not far off the barn plethoric, with the autumn's harvest spoils, holds the farmer's well-earned trophies, the guerdon of his toils. Filled the lofts with hay sweet-scented, ravished from the meadows green, while beneath are stalled the cattle, with their quiet, drowsy mien. Deep and spacious are the grain bins, brimming o'er with nature's gold. Here are piles of yellow pumpkins, on the barn floor loosely rolled. Just below, in deep recesses, safe from wintry frost and chill, there are heaps of ruddy apples from the orchard on the hill. Many a year has Grand'ther Baldwin in the old house dwelt in peace. As his hair each year grew whiter, he has seen his herds increase. Sturdy sons and comely daughters, growing up from childish plays, one by one have met life's duties, and gone forth their several ways. Hushed the voice of childish laughter, hushed is childhood's merry tone. By the fireside Grand'ther Baldwin and his good wife sit alone, turning round half apprehensive, recking not how time had fled, of the lurking savage foeman from whose musket it was sped. Not far off the barn plethoric, with the autumn's harvest spoils, holds the farmer's well-earned trophies, the guerdon of his toils. Filled the lofts with hay sweet-scented, ravished from the meadows green, while beneath are stalled the cattle, with their quiet, drowsy mien. Deep and spacious are the grain bins, brimming o'er with nature's gold. Here are piles of yellow pumpkins, on the barn floor loosely rolled. Just below, in deep recesses, safe from wintry frost and chill, there are heaps of ruddy apples from the orchard on the hill. Many a year has Grand'ther Baldwin in the old house dwelt in peace. As his hair each year grew whiter, he has seen his herds increase. Sturdy sons and comely daughters, growing up from childish plays, one by one have met life's duties, and gone forth their several ways. Hushed the voice of childish laughter, hushed is childhood's merry tone. By the fireside Grand'ther Baldwin and his good wife sit alone. Yet once within the 12-month, when the days are short and drear, and chill winds chant the requiem of the slowly fading year, when the autumn work is over, and the harvest gathered in, once again the old house echoes to a long unwonted din. Logs of hickory blaze and crackle, in the fireplace huge anti-high, curling wreaths of smoke mount upward to the gray November sky. Ruddy lads and smiling lasses, just let loose from schooldom's cares, patter, patter, race and clatter, up and down the great hall stairs. All the boys shall hold high revel, all the girls shall have their way. That's the law at Grand'ther Baldwin's upon each Thanksgiving Day. From the parlor's sacred precincts, hark! A madder uproar yet. Roguish Charlie's playing stagecoach, and the stagecoach was upset. Joe, black-eyed and laughter-loving, Grand'ther's specs his nose across, gravely winks at brother Willie, who is gaily playing horse. Grandma's face is fairly radiant. Grand'ther knows not how to frown, though the children in their frolic turn the old house upside down. For the boys may hold high revel, and the girls must have their way. That's the law at Grand'ther Baldwin's upon each Thanksgiving Day. But the dinner, the dinner words are feeble to portray what a culinary triumph is achieved Thanksgiving Day. Fairly groans the board with dainties, but the turkey rules the roast, aldermanic at the outset, at the last a fleshless ghost. Then the richness of the pudding, and the flavor of the pie. When you've dined at Grandma Baldwin's, you will know as well as I. When at length the feast was ended, Grand'ther Baldwin bent his head, and amid the solemn silence, with a reverent voice, he said, Now unto God, the gracious one, we thanks and homage pay, who guardeth us and guideth us, and loveth us always. He scatters blessings in our paths, he giveth us increase, he crowns us with his kindness, and he granteth us his peace. Unto himself, our wandering feet, we pray that he may draw, and may we strive with faithful hearts to keep his holy law. His simple words in silence died, a moment's hush, and then, from all the listening hearts there rose a solemn voiced Amen. End of Grand'ther Baldwin by Horatio Alger, Jr. Section 3 of Thanksgiving Short Stories and Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Gabriella Sasscer. How Thanksgiving Came by Elizabeth Gordon. Gobble, 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 said Mr. Turkey Cock, proudly spreading his wonderful turkey tail fan, and looking as pompous as no one but he can look. Oh, you funny, conceited bird, said the boy named Billy. You won't be so noisy next Thursday when we have you for Thanksgiving dinner. But that reminds me, won't somebody please tell me why the turkey is called our national bird? I thought it was the eagle. And why do we always have Thanksgiving Day on Thursday? "Well, you see, son," said somebody, "it started this way, as you of course know. Our Pilgrim fathers and mothers came over in the Mayflower, and landed on Plymouth Rock on November 21st, 1620. Just 102 brave souls in a strange land, full of strange people, who might well resent their being there. Although it was late in the year, and cold weather, they managed to build themselves houses of a sort. But with the best that they could do, more than half of them perished that first terrible winter. When spring came, those who were left, with the help of the Indians, bravely planted the crops and started to make a home in the wilderness. The Indians gave them corn for seed, and taught them how to plow the land and fertilize it. And with the seed that they had brought with them they managed so well that when harvest came they had a bountiful yield. To express their gratitude to God, who had so marvelously prospered them, as well as to show their friendliness to the Indians, Governor Bradford issued a proclamation to the effect that they would have a Thanksgiving feast, to which Chief Massasoit and his braves were to be invited, which should last from Thursday morning until Saturday night. That was in October, 1621. But the Pilgrim mothers remembered the harvest festivals of England, with the barbecued sheep and oxen which they used to have, said, "How can we make a feast? We have no meat." "Meat?" said Governor Bradford. "Why, the woods are full of it." So he sent 4 of his very best riflemen out into the forest for wild turkeys, and they brought back so many that there was enough meat for the 3 days' feasting for the colonists and their guests, the Indians. And ever since then no Thanksgiving feast could be really right without a nice plump turkey. "Did the Indians like the feast?" asked the boy named Billy. "Indeed they did," said somebody. "They liked it so well that Chief Massasoit sent his young men back with a gift of nice fat deer, which they had shot especially for the colonists. Chief Massasoit wanted to show Governor Bradford that the Indians knew how to play fairly." "So that's how Thanksgiving became," said the boy named Billy. "Yes," answered somebody. "But it was a long time after that before it became a good old holiday that we know now." In the first year of his office, President George Washington issued a proclamation recommending that November 26th, 1789, be kept as a day of national thanksgiving, for the establishment of a form of government that made for safety and happiness. After that it was only held at odd times. But in 1863 it became a national holiday, and the last Thursday in November is always proclaimed by the President as a day of prayer and thanksgiving. "We're going to have the whole family here for dinner this year," said the boy named Billy, "and we're going to have turkey and cranberry jelly and pumpkin pie and everything." "Gobble, gobble, gobble," remarked Mr. Turkey Cock. "We shall," remarked the boy Billy, laughing. End of How Thanksgiving Came by Elizabeth Gordon. Section 4 of Thanksgiving Short Stories and Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Gabriella Sasscer. Thanksgiving by Jamie Harris Coleman. Thanksgiving should be every day instead of once a year. Give thanks each day, give thanks each night to Christ who is so dear. Give thanks each day, give thanks each night for all the Lord has done. He'll help us fight our battles until the victory's won. Give thanks unto the Savior, his joyous praises sing. In the ears of every Christian let the name of Jesus ring. Give thanks to him each morning, give thanks at noon and night. Ask him for daily blessings, and stand up for the right. Let each day be thanksgiving for the blessings from above, for the guidance and protection, and his eternal love. End of Thanksgiving by Jamie Harris Coleman. Section 5 of Thanksgiving Short Stories and Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Gabriella Sasscer. Aunt Susanna's Thanksgiving Dinner by L.M. Montgomery. "Here's Aunt Susanna, girls," said Laura, who was sitting by the north window. Nothing but north light does for Laura, who is the artist of our talented family. Each of us has a little pet, new-fledged talent, which we are faithfully cultivating, in the hope that it will amount to something and soar highly some day. But it is difficult to cultivate 4 talents on our tiny income. If Laura wasn't such a good manager, we never could do it. Laura's words were a signal for Kate to hang up her violin, and for me to push my pen and portfolio out of sight. Laura had hidden her brushes and watercolors as she spoke. Only Margaret continued to bend serenely over her Latin grammar. Aunt Susanna frowns on musical and literary and artistic ambitions, but she accords a faint approval to Margaret's desire for an education. A college course, with a tangible diploma at the end, and a sensible pedagogic aspiration is something Aunt Susanna can understand when she tries hard. But she cannot understand messing with paints, fiddling, or scribbling, and she has only unmeasured contempt for messers, fiddlers, and scribblers. Time was when we had paid no attention to Aunt Susanna's views on these points, but ever since she had, on one incautious day, when she was in high good humor, dropped a pale, anemic little hint that she might send Margaret to college if she were a good girl, we had been bending all our energies toward securing Aunt Susanna's approval. It was not enough that Aunt Susanna should approve of Margaret. She must approve of the whole 4 of us, or she would not help Margaret. That is Aunt Susanna's way. Of late we had been growing a little discouraged. Aunt Susanna had recently read a magazine article which stated that the higher education of women was ruining our country, and that a woman who was a B.A. couldn't, in the very nature of things, ever be a housewifely, cookly creature. Consequently, Margaret's chances looked a little foggy, but we hadn't quite given up hope. A very little thing might sway Aunt Susanna one way or the other, so that we walked very softly and tried to mingle serpents, wisdom, and doves, harmlessness, in practical portions. When Aunt Susanna came in, Laura was crocheting, Kate was sewing, and I was poring over a recipe book. That was not deception at all, since we did all these things frequently, much more frequently, in fact, than we painted or fiddled or wrote. But Aunt Susanna would never believe it, nor did she believe it now. She threw back her lovely new sealskin cape, looked around the sitting room, and then smiled, a truly Aunt Susannian smile. "What a pity you forgot to wipe that smudge of paint off your nose, Laura," she said sarcastically. "You don't seem to get on very fast with your lace. How long is it since you began it? Over 3 months, isn't it?" "This is the 3rd piece of the same pattern I've done in 3 months, Aunt Susanna," said Laura presently. Laura is an old duck. She never gets cross and snaps back. I do, and it's so hard not to, with Aunt Susanna sometimes. But I generally manage it, for I'd do anything for Margaret. Laura did not tell Aunt Susanna that she sold her lace at the Women's Exchange in town, and made enough to buy her new hats. She makes enough out of her watercolors to dress herself. Aunt Susanna took a second breath and started in again. "I noticed your violin hasn't quite as much dust on it as the rest of the things in this room, Kate. It's a pity you stopped playing just as I came in. I don't enjoy fiddling much, but I'd prefer it to seeing anyone using a needle who isn't accustomed to it." Kate is really the most dainty needlewoman and does all the fine sewing in our family. She colored and said nothing, that being the highest pitch of virtue to which our Katie, like myself, can attain. And there's Margaret, ruining her eyes over books, went on Aunt Susanna severely. Will you kindly tell me, Margaret Thorne, what good you ever expect Latin to do you? Well, you see, Aunt Susanna, said Margaret gently, Magsie and Laura are birds of a feather. I want to be a teacher, if I can manage to get through, and I shall need Latin for that. All the girls, except me, had now got their accustomed rap, but I knew better than to hope I should escape. So you're reading a recipe book, Agnes? Well, that's better than poring over a novel. I'm afraid you haven't been at it very long, though. People generally don't read recipes upside down. And besides, you didn't quite cover up your portfolio. I see a corner of it sticking out. Was a genius burning before I came in? It's too bad if I've quenched the flame. A cookery book isn't such a novelty to me as you seem to think, Aunt Susanna, I said as meekly as it was possible for me. Why, I'm a real good cook, if I do say it as hadn't orter. I am, too. Well, I'm glad to hear it, said Aunt Susanna skeptically, because that has to do with my errand here today. I'm in a peck of troubles. Firstly, Miranda Mary's mother has had to go and get sick, and Miranda Mary must go home to wait on her. Secondly, I've just had a telegram from my sister-in-law, who has been ordered west for her health, and I'll have to leave on tonight's train to see her before she goes. I can't get back until the noon train Thursday, and that is Thanksgiving, and I've invited Mr. and Mrs. Gilbert to dinner that day. They'll come on the same train. I'm dreadfully worried. There doesn't seem to be anything I can do except get one of you girls to go up to the Pinery Thursday morning and cook the dinner for us. Do you think you can manage it? We all felt rather dismayed, and nobody volunteered with a rush. But as I had just boasted that I could cook, it was plainly my duty to step into the breach, and I did it with fear and trembling. I'll go, Aunt Susanna, I said. And I'll help you, said Kate. Well, I suppose I'll have to try you, said Aunt Susanna, with the air of a woman determined to make the best of a bad business. Here is the key of the kitchen door. You'll find everything in the pantry, turkey and all. The mince pies are all ready made, so you'll only have to warm them up. I want dinner sharp at 12, for the train is due at 11:50. Mr. and Mrs. Gilbert are very particular, and I do hope you will have things right. Oh, if I could only be home myself! Why will people get sick at such inconvenient times? Don't worry, Aunt Susanna, I said comfortingly. Kate and I will have your Thanksgiving dinner ready for you in tip-top style. Well, I'm sure I hope so. Don't get too mooning over a story, Agnes. I'll lock the library up, and fortunately there are no fiddles at the Pinery. Above all, don't let any of the McGinnises in. They'll be sure to be prowling around when I'm not home. Don't give that dog of theirs any scraps either. That is Miranda Mary's one fault. She will feed that dog in spite of all I can do, and I can't walk out of my own back door without falling over him. We promised to eschew the McGinnises and all their works, including the dog, and when Aunt Susanna had gone, we looked at each other with mingled hope and fear. Girls, this is the chance of our lives, said Laura. If you can only please Aunt Susanna with this dinner, it will convince her that you are good cooks in spite of your nefarious bent for music and literature. I consider the illness of Miranda Mary's mother a providential interposition, that is, if she isn't too sick. It's all very well for you to be pleased, Lola, I said dolefully, but I don't feel jubilant over the prospect at all. Something will probably go wrong. And then there's our own nice little Thanksgiving celebration we've planned, and pinched and economized for weeks to provide. That is half spoiled now. Oh, what is that compared to Margaret's chance of going to college? Exclaimed Kate. Cheer up, Aggie. You know we can cook. I feel that it is now or never with Aunt Susanna. I cheered up accordingly. We are not given to pessimism, which is fortunate. Ever since Father died 4 years ago, we have struggled on here, content to give up a good deal just to keep our home and be together. This little gray house, oh how we do love it and its apple trees, is ours, and we have, as aforesaid, a tiny income and our ambitions. Not very big ambitions, but big enough to give zest to our lives and hope to the future. We've been very happy as a rule. Aunt Susanna has a big house and lots of money, but she isn't as happy as we are. She nags us a good deal, just as she used to nag Father. But we don't mind it very much after all. Indeed, I sometimes suspect that we really like Aunt Susanna tremendously, if she'd only leave us alone long enough to find it out. Thursday morning was an ideal Thanksgiving morning, bright, crisp, and sparkling. There had been a white frost in the night, and the orchard and the white birch wood behind it looked like fairyland. We were all up early. None of us had slept well, and both Kate and I had had the most fearful dreams of spoiling Aunt Susanna's Thanksgiving dinner. "Never mind, dreams always go by contraries, you know," said Laura cheerfully. "You'd better go up to the pinery early and get the fires on, for the house will be cold. Remember the McGinnises and the dog. Weigh the turkey so that you'll know exactly how long to cook it. Put the pies in the oven in time to get piping hot. Lukewarm mince pies are an abomination. Be sure, Laura, don't confuse us with any more cautions," I groaned, "or we shall get hopelessly fuddled. Come on, Kate, before she has time to." It wasn't very far up to the pinery, just 10 minutes' walk, and such a delightful walk on that delightful morning. We went through the orchard, and then through the white birch wood, where the loveliness of the frosted boughs awed us. Beyond that there was a lane between ranks of young, balsamy white misted firs, and then an open pasture field, sere and crispy. Just across it was the pinery, a lovely old house with dormer windows in the roof, surrounded by pines that were dark and glorious against the silvery morning sky. The McGinnis dog was sitting on the back door steps when we arrived. He wagged his tail ingratiatingly, but we ruthlessly pushed him off, went in, and shut the door in his face. All the little McGinnises were sitting in a row on their fence, and they whooped derisively. The McGinnis manners are not those which appertain to the caste of Vere de Vere, but we rather like the urchins. There are 8 of them, and we would probably have gone over to talk to them if we had not had the fear of Aunt Susanna before our eyes. We kindled the fires, weighed the turkey, put it in the oven, and prepared the vegetables. Then we set the dining-room table and decorated it with Aunt Susanna's potted ferns and dishes of lovely red apples. Everything went so smoothly that we soon forgot to be nervous. When the turkey was done, we took it out, set it on the back of the range to keep warm, and put the mince pies in. The potatoes, cabbage, and turnips were bubbling away cheerfully, and everything was going as merrily as a marriage bell. Then, all at once, things happened. In an evil hour, we went to the yard window and looked out. We saw a quiet scene. The McGinnis dog was still sitting on his haunches by the steps, just as he had been sitting all the morning. Down in the McGinnis yard, everything wore an unusually peaceful aspect. Only one McGinnis was in sight, Tony, aged 8, who was perched up on the edge of the well-box, swinging his legs, and singing at the top of his melodious Irish voice. All at once, just as we were looking at him, Tony went over backward and apparently tumbled head foremost down his father's well. Kate and I screamed simultaneously. We tore across the kitchen, flung open the door, plunged down over Aunt Susanna's yard, scrambled over the fence, and flew to the well. Just as we reached it, Tony's red head appeared as he climbed serenely out over the box. I don't know whether I felt more relieved or furious. He had merely fallen on the blank guard inside the box, and there are times when I am tempted to think he fell on purpose, because he saw Kate and me looking out the window. At least, he didn't seem at all frightened, and grinned most impishly at us. Kate and I turned on our heels and marched back in as dignified a manner as was possible under the circumstances. Halfway up Aunt Susanna's yard, we forgot dignity and broke into a run. We had left the door open, and the McGinnis dog had disappeared. Never shall I forget the sight we saw or the smell we smelled when we burst into that kitchen. There on the floor was the McGinnis dog, and what was left of Aunt Susanna's Thanksgiving turkey. As for the smell, imagine a commingled odor of scorching turnips and burning mince pies, and you have it. The dog fled out with a guilty yelp. I groaned and snatched the turnips off. Kate threw open the oven door and dragged out the pies. Pies and turnips were ruined, as irretrievable as the turkey. "Oh, what shall we do?" I cried miserably. I knew Margaret's chance of college was gone forever. "Do?" Kate was superb. She didn't lose her wits for a second. "We'll go home and borrow the girls' dinner. Quick, there's just 10 minutes before train time. Throw those pies and turnips into this basket. The turkey, too. We'll carry them with us to hide them." I might not be able to evolve an idea like that on the spur of the moment, but I can at least act up to it when it is presented. Without a moment's delay, we shut the door and ran. As we went, I saw the McGinnis dog licking his chops over in their yard. I have been ashamed ever since of my feelings toward that dog. They are murderous. Fortunately, I had no time to indulge them. It is 10 minutes' walk from the pinery to our house, but you can run it in 5. Kate and I burst into the kitchen, just as Laura and Margaret were sitting down to dinner. We had neither time nor breath for explanations. Without a word, I grasped the turkey platter and the turnip tureen. Kate caught one hot mince pie from the oven and whisked a cold one out of the pantry. "We've got to have them," was all she said. I've always said that Laura and Magsie would rise to any occasion. They saw us carry their Thanksgiving dinner off under their very eyes, and they never interfered by word or motion. They didn't even worry us with questions. They realized that something desperate had happened, and that the emergency called for deed, not words. "Aggie," gasped Kate behind me as we tore through the birchwood, "the border of these pies is crimped differently from Aunt Susanna's." "She won't know the difference," I panted. "Miranda Mary crimps them." We got back to the pinery just as the train whistle blew. We had 10 minutes to transfer turkey and turnips to Aunt Susanna's dishes, hide our own, air the kitchen, and get back our breath. We accomplished it. When Aunt Susanna and her guests came, we were prepared for them. We were calm, outwardly, and the second mince pie was getting hot in the oven. It was ready by the time it was needed. Fortunately, our turkey was the same size as Aunt Susanna's, and Laura had cooked a double supply of turnips, intending to warm them up the next day. Still, all things considered, Kate and I didn't enjoy that dinner much. We kept thinking of poor Laura and Magsie at home, dining off potatoes on Thanksgiving. But at least Aunt Susanna was satisfied. When Kate and I were washing the dishes, she came out quite beamingly. "Well, my dears, I must admit that you made a very good job of the dinner. Indeed, the turkey was done to perfection. As for the mince pies, well, of course Miranda Mary made them, but she must have had extra good luck with them, for they were excellent and heated to just the right degree. You didn't give anything to the McGinnis dog, I hope?" "No, we didn't give him anything," said Kate. Aunt Susanna did not notice the emphasis. When we had finished the dishes, we smuggled our platter and tureen out of the house and went home. Laura and Margaret were busy painting and studying, and were just as sweet-tempered as if we hadn't robbed them of their dinner. But we had to tell them the whole story before we even took off our hats. "There is a special providence for children and idiots," said Laura gently. We didn't ask her whether she meant us or Tony McGinnis, or both. There are some things better left in obscurity. I'd have probably said something much sharper than that if anybody had made off with my Thanksgiving turkey so unceremoniously. Aunt Susanna came down the next day and told Margaret that she would send her to college. Also, she commissioned Laura to paint her a watercolor for her dining room and said she'd pay her $5 for it. Kate and I were rather left out in the cold in this distribution of favors, but when you come to reflect that Laura and Magsie had really cooked that dinner, it was only just. Anyway, Aunt Susanna has never since insinuated that we can't cook, and that is as much as we deserve. End of Aunt Susanna's Thanksgiving Dinner by L.M. Montgomery. End of Thanksgiving Short Stories and Poems